The palace was quiet now, but Daniel knew the calm would not last. The attack had been a warning, a test of courage and unity, and there were more forces outside ready to challenge them. He glanced at the princess, noting the strength and confidence in her eyes. She had transformed from the fragile girl he had once chosen into a leader who could command both respect and fear. Her exosuit, though slightly damaged in the last fight, still shimmered with golden light, enhancing her presence. Daniel felt a surge of admiration. She was no longer someone to protect merely out of obligation. She was someone he would follow into any battle. The doors of the hall suddenly opened, revealing a squad of elite Valyrian soldiers. Their faces were hidden behind advanced helmets, but their posture spoke of discipline and urgency. They came to escort the princess to safety, but she shook her head. "We stay here. We need to show them we will not cower." Daniel understood. She was right. Retreating would only embolden their enemies. The hall had become a symbol, not just of the human princess bond, but of the idea that courage could overcome prejudice and fear. As they moved deeper into the palace, Daniel noticed the subtle ways the princess guided him. Her exosuit sensors mapped enemy movements, and she whispered instructions in his ear. Every step was calculated, every decision deliberate. Despite her mechanical enhancements, her leadership was profoundly human. She assessed situations with logic and empathy, always considering the lives of those around her. Daniel realized that her disability had never been a weakness. It had taught her patience, strategy, and the importance of relying on more than just brute strength. They reached the central control room, a high-tech hub filled with holographic displays and communication arrays. The room hummed with energy as the princess took control of the palace's defense systems. She activated automated turrets, energy shields, and emergency protocols. Daniel watched in awe. The girl who had once needed his protection was now protecting everyone, including him. It was a humbling realization. Suddenly, alarms blared again. The attackers had regrouped outside, launching a larger assault this time. The princess's eyes narrowed as she analyzed the incoming forces. "They underestimate us," she said. "They think they can intimidate us because I am different. They are wrong." Daniel felt a surge of pride. She was fearless, unshaken by physical limitations or societal expectations. Her strength came from determination, intelligence, and a refusal to accept defeat. The first wave of enemies broke through the outer defenses. Daniel and the princess moved side by side, their actions synchronized. She directed energy blasts with precision, while Daniel used human agility to flank and neutralize attackers. They were a team in the truest sense, each complementing the other's strengths. Every move they made was a lesson in trust and coordination, and it became clear that their bond was more than symbolic. It was practical, effective, and inspiring. Amid the chaos, the princess's exosuit began to overheat again. Sparks flew from the joints and the golden glow dimmed. Daniel instinctively grabbed her arm, steadying her. "We can't keep doing this alone," he shouted over the noise. She shook her head. "We have to. Our people are watching. If we falter, they will lose hope." Her determination was contagious. Daniel felt his own resolve harden. He would not fail her, or anyone else relying on them. The enemies pressed harder, using advanced weaponry and tactics designed to exploit weaknesses. But the princess anticipated every move. She calculated trajectories, manipulated energy fields, and guided Daniel through narrow corridors and debris-strewn halls. Every encounter tested their limits, yet they persevered. Each victory was a reminder that courage, strategy, and partnership could overcome overwhelming odds. At one critical moment, a massive energy blast tore through the floor near them. Daniel shielded the princess instinctively, but the blast threw them off balance. She crashed into a wall and her exosuit emitted a warning signal. Her movements slowed, and Daniel knew she could not continue fighting at full strength. Without hesitation, he lifted her, cradling her against his chest. She looked up at him, her silver eyes steady, not with fear but with trust. "I believed in you," she said softly. "Now you lead." Daniel carried her through the remaining hallways, following her instructions to disable enemy weapons and secure the palace. Despite the weight of her body in the suit, he felt no strain. His strength was fueled by determination, by a desire to protect someone who had chosen to believe in him all those years ago. The attackers, confused by their teamwork and resilience, began to falter. Human ingenuity and Valyrian technology, combined with courage and trust, proved more effective than brute force. Finally, they reached the main courtyard, where sunlight spilled over the shattered remnants of the palace gardens. The last group of attackers was advancing, but the princess activated a defensive perimeter that trapped them without causing unnecessary casualties. Daniel marveled at her strategy. She had turned a potentially deadly situation into one of containment and negotiation. Her disability had never limited her vision. If anything, it had sharpened it. The courtyard fell silent. The attackers, realizing they could not break the bond between human and princess, surrendered. Guards and diplomats began to emerge, cautiously assessing the aftermath. The princess stepped down from her exosuit and Daniel helped her to her feet. She was exhausted, but her posture remained regal, her eyes clear and commanding. She looked at Daniel, and for a moment there were no words, only understanding and mutual respect. The High Council approached, their expressions a mixture of awe and caution. They had witnessed the human-princess partnership in action, and the implications were undeniable. "Human Daniel," one council member said, voice steady but respectful. "Do you confirm your commitment to the princess, not as a title or a ceremonial gesture, but as a partner in truth and action?" Daniel looked at the princess. She nodded slightly, a subtle gesture of affirmation and trust. "I choose her," he said, his voice firm and unwavering. "I chose her once without knowing, and now I choose her knowing everything. I will stand with her as she has stood with me." The council murmured, some in approval, others in disbelief, but none could deny the courage and unity they had witnessed. The princess reached out, taking Daniel's hand in a gesture that spoke of partnership, equality, and mutual respect. It was a simple act, but its meaning was profound. Together they had faced chaos, danger, and doubt, and they had emerged stronger. The sun continued to rise over the Valyrian capital, casting light on the palace and the people who now saw the human and the princess in a new way. They were not defined by their differences, nor by the expectations of society. They were defined by choice, courage, and the willingness to act for what was right. Daniel realized that this moment, this day, this partnership, would be remembered for generations. It was the beginning of a new era, one where trust, bravery, and unity could reshape not just the palace, but the galaxy itself. The princess looked at Daniel with a small, proud smile. "You returned," she said simply, "and now we face the future together." Daniel returned her smile, feeling a warmth and certainty he had never known. "Together," he replied. They stood there for a moment, hand in hand, watching as the palace staff and guards began to restore order. Their partnership had been tested, proven, and solidified. It was no longer symbolic. It was real, active, and unbreakable. Every life they had saved, every obstacle they had overcome, had strengthened their bond. In that quiet moment, Daniel understood something crucial. Strength was not measured by physical ability alone. It was measured by resilience, determination, courage, and the capacity to believe in others. The princess, once seen as fragile, had shown that her limitations were irrelevant in the face of intelligence, willpower, and the choice to act bravely. The events of the day would ripple far beyond the palace walls. Other diplomats, leaders, and citizens would hear of the human who had returned to honor a vow, and the Valyrian princess who had defied expectations and led with courage. Their story would become a symbol, a tale told to inspire hope, courage, and the belief that even the most unlikely alliances could change the course of history. Daniel and the princess began walking through the restored corridors, side by side. She leaned slightly on his arm and he adjusted to her pace without complaint. They spoke quietly, not of politics or strategy, but of shared experiences and understanding. Each word, each glance reinforced the bond that had begun years ago with a single, simple gesture, a flower, a choice, a promise. As they approached the palace's tallest balcony, overlooking the capital and the stars beyond, the princess paused. She gazed into the distance, her eyes reflecting both past struggles and future possibilities. Daniel stood beside her, understanding that this view was more than just a city. It was a universe of potential. Their partnership would not end with a battle or a ceremony. It would continue, shaping alliances, inspiring courage, and reminding everyone that strength came in many forms. She turned to him, her voice soft but firm. "We have work to do, Daniel. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone who believes in peace, trust, and courage." Daniel nodded, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. "And we'll face them together," he said. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the palace. But the twin suns of Valara Prime beat down relentlessly on the barren wastelands below the Imperial Palace. Sand and stone stretched for miles, broken only by jagged cliffs and the occasional metal spire from long-abandoned mining colonies. Princess Lyra walked alone along the ridge, her boots kicking up dust with every step. Her skin, pale against the harsh light, glistened with sweat. She had trained since sunrise, practicing maneuvers her instructors once deemed impossible for a princess. But today it felt useless. Today, like every other day, the weight of her failure hung heavy on her shoulders. Lyra was young, barely 18 by human standards, yet she carried the shame of being declared barren. In the Valari culture, fertility was not just a personal matter, it was destiny. Bloodlines had to continue or the empire risked decay. The High Oracle, a shadowy figure who spoke only in riddles and prophecies, had examined her months ago and delivered the verdict without hesitation. "No life will spring from your womb. Your line ends here," the oracle had whispered in the echoing marble hall. Her father, Emperor Varian, had not looked at her once since the declaration. He did not scold or weep. He simply ordered her exiled to a forgotten moon on the edge of the empire, a place where nothing of value remained. "There you will learn what it means to serve," he said coldly. Lyra had been given nothing more than basic survival supplies and an aging guard who avoided eye contact and spoke only when commanded. The outpost was desolate, a cluster of metal structures half buried in sand. It was meant to hold prisoners or deserters, and now it held her. Lyra made the place her own, scavenging from the ruins and hunting small creatures that skittered across the moonscape. She built traps, fortified shelters, and trained relentlessly. She could fight better than anyone in her age, yet every night, when the cold darkness of the twin moons enveloped her, she felt the ache of loneliness, far across the stars, in a galaxy that barely intersected with Valara Prime's politics. A human soldier named Captain Ethan Cole piloted his ship through a quiet stretch of space. His mission had been diplomatic in nature, escorting ambassadors to a meeting with the Valari. Humans were technically allies, but their presence was seen with suspicion. Ethan, seasoned in countless conflicts, knew the importance of caution. Suddenly, alarms blared. An ambush. Rogue Valeri zealots, angry at the prospect of peace with humans, had tracked the convoy. They fired energy pulses that tore through the void, shattering Ethan's ship. He fought back, but a blast tore through the hull and he lost control. The last thing he remembered before blackout was the cold vacuum of space rushing toward him. Ethan awoke to a blinding light. His vision was blurry and pain throbbed through his limbs. As he tried to lift his head, a figure approached, slender, armored lightly but with eyes sharp and alert. She had green-tinged skin, long dark hair, and the posture of someone who had learned to survive by force alone. "Lyra, you're awake," she said cautiously. Her voice was melodic but held an edge. She knelt beside him, checking his injuries. "You shouldn't have come here." "I didn't." Ethan struggled to sit up, wincing. "Where am I?" "You are on my moon," she said, eyes narrowing. "And you are very lucky to be alive." Ethan looked at her incredulously. "A princess?" "I was a princess," she said bitterly. "Now I am nothing more than abandoned property. My people left me to die." Her words cut through him. There was anger in them, but also a hint of vulnerability he hadn't expected from a warrior. Ethan tried to stand but collapsed. Lyra helped him up, her hands surprisingly strong. "Stay down. You are fragile," she scolded softly. "And humans are delicate." Days passed. Ethan's wound slowly healed under her care. At first they barely spoke. He was cautious. She was suspicious, yet survival required cooperation. Lyra taught him to hunt the small moon creatures that skittered through the rocks. Ethan in turn shared strategies from his own training. How to set traps efficiently, how to avoid detection, how to use his surroundings to his advantage. Slowly, an unlikely partnership formed. Lyra had learned that humans were soft yet clever. Ethan had learned that Valeri were formidable, yet capable of kindness. They began to rely on one another, often in silence but always with trust growing like a fragile sapling in a harsh desert. One evening, under the twin moon's silver light, Lyra finally spoke of her past. "They abandoned me because I could not bear a child. My father sees me as worthless. My people, they say I am cursed. The High Oracle confirmed it. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she did not look at him. Ethan frowned. That's absurd. If your worth is only measured by children, then your people are blind. You've survived more than anyone there ever could. Lyra turned, startled by his fervor. You don't understand. In my culture, being barren is shame beyond forgiveness. Then you teach them how wrong they are, Ethan said firmly. If your bloodline rejected you, make a new one. Lead in your own way. His words were simple, but they struck her like lightning. For the first time in years, Lyra felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps she did not need their acceptance. Perhaps she could forge her own path, one that did not rely on their outdated laws or cruel traditions. Their growing trust was tested when a violent storm struck the moon. Sand whipped across the outpost, tearing through makeshift walls. Lyra and Ethan were forced to take shelter in the deepest cavern she had dug months ago. The storm raged outside, shaking the walls, and for hours they sat in tense silence. Ethan tended to her small injuries she had ignored, while Lyra watched his careful movements. You are strong, he said softly, almost to himself, and smart. You could lead any army. You don't need them to define you. Lyra's heart pounded. She had never heard anyone speak so plainly about her abilities without judgment. Her eyes met his, and in them she saw a spark of admiration, not pity. Days turned into weeks. Ethan repaired his communication devices, hoping to contact human forces, but the harsh environment of the moon made signals unreliable. Meanwhile, Lyra's skills improved even further. Together, they constructed defenses and strategized ways to survive potential threats. Each day, they became a formidable team. She with her deadly precision and warrior instincts, he with his tactical mind and resourcefulness. One night, as they sat around a small fire in the shelter, Lyra asked, "Do humans care for someone they don't know?" Ethan considered. "We care for people who show courage, kindness, people who fight for what is right, even when it's hard. You've done that, Lyra. You're not just a princess. You're someone I trust with my life." Her chest tightened. She had never expected to hear such words from anyone, let alone a human whom she had been taught to view as weak and inferior. Yet his sincerity was undeniable. The first sign of external danger arrived unexpectedly. A scout ship from the Volari Empire approached the moon. They were not coming to rescue her. They were coming to eliminate her. News of her harboring a human would not be tolerated. Lyra's initial instinct was to surrender, to protect Ethan at all costs, but he refused. "We survive together or we die together," he said, standing tall despite the injuries she had been tending. Lyra nodded, determination burning in her eyes. For the first time she felt a sense of purpose that was entirely her own. No longer a discarded princess, she would fight. She would survive, and she would make the Volari Empire see her worth, not as a breeder of heirs, but as a leader capable of shaping destiny itself. As the scout ship descended, Lyra readied her weapons while Ethan prepared his makeshift explosives and defensive positions. Together they formed an unlikely force, the Barren princess and the human soldier, facing the might of an empire determined to erase her. Neither spoke of surrender. Both knew that whatever happened next, their fates were entwined. Lyra glanced at Ethan, and for the first time she smiled, not with amusement but with recognition. He had given her something more valuable than any birthright: hope. And as the twin suns set behind the jagged cliffs, painting the moon in shades of crimson and gold, she felt something she had never felt before: power. The power to decide her own destiny, and that was just the beginning.